Hello everyone, so I'm back with another video, and this time to shatter the myth that graph view is useless. Alright, so just making this video right now to show how graph view can be used, and it's not just some fancy thing, it's something with very real use, very real applications, and you can see it in real time. I'm not going to convince you, just follow along with me here. I'll show you how it works along with my threading mode. Hopefully after that, this catches more interest, more people come onto graph view, we create more enthusiasm regarding this. More people start to connect ideas and give this part of Obsidian more love. So right now I've opened a certain layout. This is the light theme by Nick Milo, so it's a really awesome theme, so I'm just going to use it right now for this video. If you haven't watched my threading mode video in the past, please do, because I'm not going to re-explain it in this video, but essentially it's a method where which is kind of similar to traditional Zetterkasten, where you create note cards and then create a sequence of it, kind of similar to Twitter threads or conversations or forum posts, and then having forks of or like threads that branch out, like in forum posts, or if you're familiar with Twitter, creating alternative pathways. Just have a look at the threading mode. This video here will be more about the graph view and how I use it to connect ideas. Okay, so I've kind of engineered this video a bit, so just letting you know in advance that it's not it's planned, and the real magic that happens with graph view is usually spontaneous. Creates somewhat of a surprise factor that can be a bit addictive, especially if you're a knowledge geek like me. Yeah. So certain things you need to have: the breadcrumbs plugin, data view plugin, and the meta edit plugin. I'll just show you. Have a look here: data view, breadcrumbs, and meta edit. I also have the Readwise official plugin here, which is awesome. So I normally capture things on apps or Readwise itself, and then it synchronizes all of these highlights into my vault. So I'll just show you my workflow. So right here I have this journal article from the Frontier magazine or journal. Have a few highlights that I've made here. Okay, it's not complete. I just did it. I thought this article was pretty interesting, and I just wanted to show you how it worked. So my setup here, so I don't use the global graph view, so I use the local graph. So up here you click more options and then go down to open local graph, and then you can click this icon to just drag it anywhere you want it. I love having just one sidebar, so I put it together with the file explorer on the left. Okay, so when you activate this page by clicking on it, it activates the local graph here. The way to navigate this is you can click anywhere to drag it, left or right button doesn't matter, and the wheel on your mouse actually controls the zoom. Very easy to navigate. Right, so let's dive in here. So right here I can actually create a new file, I don't like to title my notes before actually having content in them. So here I'm just going to put in some metadata. So note type, type. Let's call this observation note. So this is my equivalent of literature notes. Right here, just reading this here, implicit memory is generally defined as acquired knowledge that is not available to conscious access. So you can see here certain interesting things. There's been research on this since the 1980s. Implicit memory is somewhat of a niche term that I have no idea what it means, but now they're defining it as something that's acquired, learnt, and it's not available to conscious access. So that's interesting. So one takeaway I have here is implicit memory. Okay, before we go on, look at what happened here. So I have the various complements plugin, various complements right here. So this software where this plugin where if I type in something, I can get partial matches. So right here you can see that I've already created a link somewhere in my vault on implicit memory. Just hit enter, implicit memory is linked. And something interesting happens, but we'll explore it later. Okay, so first let's finish this. Implicit memory is not accessible to conscious recall. Essentially that's what they're kind of saying here. And what I can do here is to just jog our memory in future. Double square, double caret to go to block memory, type in implicit memory is not accessible. It's generally defined as blah blah blah. Hit enter, turn that into a dot reference. So there's a link that brings me back to this if I want it in the future, right? So right here I would just give a little summary up there. So I'd say that implicit memory is not consciously accessed. It's subconsciously accessed. Yeah, so this has become my own thought, right? From reading the article. It's not something that certainly is something that the authors have provided to us, which he, by the way, got from other authors. So we've processed this thought and it's become a thought in a new thread right now that I'm creating. So the next thing that comes in my head is that if it's not accessible to a subconscious recall, how do we use it, for example, right? So there's one possibility. Another possibility is are there other types of memory? So actually you can see in the article they've gone through a different type of memory called explicit memory. So we can actually create a branch out here. So using the breadcrumbs plugin with a shortcut I use Ctrl Alternate Shift right, and it creates this new branch. So right here I'm just going to just type on explicit memory. I'm going to create a access point for future. Explicit memory is something that involves conscious recollection, recall, or recognition. So you can see there's a stark contrast right here with implicit memory. I'm going to just write that it's different from implicit memory, in which where it involves conscious access as opposed to subconscious access. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to see the full code here. So what I normally do is I just hit the alias here, we'll double caret these contrasts with, right, and let's give it star. If you're wondering why I have an icon right there, it's another plugin that I use, supercharged links, but just look it up, and I'm not going to go into a tutorial on it right here, just because it's just aesthetics. Yeah. Next, I'm just reading this here, and then it says that there's another type of implicit memory that involves the implicit learning of sequences. This is pretty interesting to me, but that it doesn't branch off from this explicit memory, which, by the way, I forgot to put the title. So explicit memory is consciously assessed. So right now I can show you some navigation, and something has happened right there in the graph view, which you probably noticed just now. So you can go to explicit memory. This is our node here. You can see that it's connected to implicit memory, and it's connected to our previous thread. So right here I can click the previous up here, part of the breadcrumbs plugin, or I can just click the graph view. It brings me back, and over here I can create another thought. So right here I just create it, right, and let's give it a summary where type of implicit memory involves sequences, and right here I can just talk about how participants are exposed to some stimuli. That's pretty interesting. So what they are essentially saying here, taking into what we just learned about implicit memory being subconscious, is that you can kind of subconsciously learn sequence without being consciously aware of it. So that's something that's pretty interesting. So I'll change the title. I'll say that we can learn sequences subconsciously. Yeah, and we can see that learning sequences is a type of implicit memory. Referencing this study below, and then yeah, so just put this right here so I can access it in the future, right? And I think right here I'm just going to just highlight this. Right. Yeah. So I'm using this plugin called actually it doesn't really show up well, so I'll just bold it. Yeah, so it shows up better here if you bold it. Okay, great stuff here. Alright, so enough playing here. Let's go back. So let's say I go back, right? Let's go back to how implicit memory is subconsciously accessed. So that's our original. Sorry about that. Let's leave that open. Let's go to this one here. So you can see that I'm creating a thread. You know, you can go on suddenly as you read the story. You can connect ideas, build really long threads, etc. But right now I'm just going to let you see the power of the graph view. So from this node alone, we have a access point to implicit memory. So what happens here is that from here, it's created this soft link to an implicit memory. It's purple because it's not an actual markdown file. There's no file, there's no content in this. It's an uncreated page, but it exists as a phantom kind of access point that provides a gateway to other things. So, you know, I've created this thread in the past before about building up prototypes, okay, and I've gotten this from the Common Code blog, I think by Cedric Chin. Really interesting blog, by the way, which you should take a look at. Yeah, so I got this idea of building up prototypes to an implicit memory. So now we know that implicit memory is subconscious learned behavior or learned memory, and building up these prototypes within this subconscious space by mirroring your role model, you know, provides you this mastery of the subject or skill. So you can see that it's part of a thread that I've already created, where modeling others is a more effective way to gain practical proficiency than deliberate practice. So you can see that actually there's a link that's being created here. So if you go all the way back, implicit memory is subconsciously accessed. It's a subconscious process, correct? And we can learn sequences subconsciously. And modeling others is a more effective way to gain practical proficiency. You can see kind of a link that's forming right there. And this is only possible if you go 1, 2, 3 or 4 levels deep. It's not sufficient to have just a 1 level deep, which is where I think a lot of this simple hyperlinking, wiki-link level kind of thing fails. Even the graph analysis plugin, which brings you pretty deep, more it's pretty good, but I don't think anything beats being able to see it graphically. If you zoom out, look at this. There's a whole ecosystem that's being built here. If you just dive in, you can see, you know, I made this thing about theory does not translate to actual practice, you know. So that's something that is pretty cool, yeah, and something that we can build off, and it actually grows even bigger. So you can see that the network here is pretty small at the moment, but let's say, you know, I've read something about dopamine receptors here. Okay, let's go back to our node here, right? And then we can probably branch out from here about dopamine. So you can see that dopamine receptors are found in the basal ganglia and in the striatum. Implicit memory has been associated with dopamine, and having increased dopamine levels in the brain lead to improved implicit learning. Shows an association right there. And in contrast, dopamine deficiencies in Parkinson patients result in poor implicit learning. So you can see that implicit learning has dopamine has this causative kind of effect or association with implicit learning, and that's something that we can link to. So let's create a link here. You can see dopamine is vital in implicit learning. Okay, so right here you can say we can cite this article, find a to, right? Okay, we can cite this and then create this interpretation of it. So where subconscious learning, so explicit learning, explicit memory is not explicit memory, sorry, implicit memory. Implicit memory is associated with dopamine. Levels in the brain, and yeah, so I mean, you can see that there's a rabbit hole that is being being open right here, and it's very interesting to me right now, but I'll try and hold back. So you can see right here, dopamine is vital in implicit learning, and this is part of the thread of this thing that we've branched out from, implicit memory, subconscious access, and it seems like it's forming a link to dopamine right here, and dopamine is going into several things right here. It's going to dopamine mediates in acquisition of Pavlovian conditioned behaviors, operant conditioning, and motivation. You know, you can actually branch out into that. This neutral stimuli can acquire motivational properties via Pavlovian learning. It came from this paper that I was reading in Nature, I think. And it seems like this dopamine idea came from a recent podcast in the Huberman Lab, I think YouTube video. Yeah, so you can see that something is happening here. You know that dopamine is related to implicit learning. At the same time, it's related to motivation. It's also mediates in Pavlovian conditioned behaviors. So you can see right here that if you don't know what Pavlovian conditioning is, it's basically reward and punishment, learning through reward and punishment. So dopamine usually associated with the reward pathway, and you can see that if implicit learning is vital in implicit dopamine is vital in implicit learning, and reward type pathways are also mediated by dopamine. So what's the difference between implicit learning and Pavlovian conditioned behaviors? I think that's another rabbit hole we can go into. So you can see that just going 2 levels deep opens up doors, whereas you wouldn't get this. Look at this, it's expanding. Look at this. And this is just a really short sample of what happens when I'm just going on about with a simple threading mode. There's just so many rabbit holes that sometimes I just add a tag to just revisit future. There's this quality of resurfacing things again and again and again, appears, you know, in real time, and you revisit the content. It's in a way somewhat of a variable kind of space repetition. Kind of works like your memory. Yeah, so I hope this video was interesting and helpful to you. Hopefully it's still some interest in the Peter Spear, or I don't know, PKM Spear, what we call it, about using graph view, and that it's not necessarily a useless tool. In fact, I think it's superior. Prove me wrong. Yeah, so yeah, looking forward to your take on it.